Meeting to order and acknowledge the Commissioners' meeting on Microsoft Teams. Begin by calling for a motion and second to grant a leave of absence to Commissioners Koba and Nemi who are out of town.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Pam will lead us through a roll call vote, please.
Commissioners Alexander,
Here.
Kupro-Comas,
Aye.
Lamb, Luther,
Aye.
O'Halloran,
Aye.
Semput,
Aye.
and Strader.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll call on Antoinette Chandler to introduce the agenda items.
Good morning. Thank you, Madam President, and good morning, Commissioners. We're in front of you today. We have two agenda items. One is the approval of adjustments to the appropriation levels for our fiscal year 21-22 budget, and the second item is the adoption of our fiscal year 23 budget, and the what goes along with that is the enactment of Ordinance 476T, which allows us or authorizes us, the port, to levy property taxes. So Fran Breeding, our Interim Director of Financial Planning and Analysis, is here. She'll walk you through those agenda items, and we'll be prepared to answer any questions that you may have. So with that, I'll turn it over to Fran.
Good morning, Madam President and Commissioners. As Antoinette said, we have two agenda items and three action items for your consideration today. So we'll just jump right into the first agenda item. We're requesting your approval of adjustments to appropriations for our current fiscal year 21-22 budget. State budget law requires that we set appropriation levels high enough so that we do not incur an over expenditure. Consistent with past practice, as we approach the end of the fiscal year, we have reviewed actual and anticipated expenditures relative to appropriations and are requesting adjustments to the general fund, the airport revenue fund, and the airport construction fund. The detailed schedule of appropriations and explanation of appropriation changes are attached as Exhibits A and B to this agenda item. For the general fund, we are requesting several adjustments, and I'll walk through the highlights. We're requesting a $31 million increase to operating revenues to recognize the land sale proceeds from the Daimler headquarters property. That was $18 million, and also higher than anticipated container volumes at Terminal 6, increasing our throughput revenues for marine operations. $5 million increase in federal, state grants / other to recognize the state of Oregon grant funding for the T2 mass timber modular housing prototype project. A $12 million increase in marine operating expenses. And again, that's to account for the higher container volumes at Terminal 6. A $2.2 million increase in our trade and equitable development operating expenses, primarily to account for closing costs and the port's contribution obligation associated with the Daimler headquarters property sale. A $1.6 million increase to other environmental to provide for accruals related to our environmental liabilities. And just as a reminder, since we do have a new commissioner on this call, this category of expenditures is for our environmental expenses for the Portland Harbor cleanup at sites the port no longer owns and operates.
I used to work for Northwest Natural, so I'm very familiar with actually the port liabilities. So those kinds of accruals actually are very familiar to me, unfortunately.
Great. And then other smaller adjustments are listed, in the agenda item and also in the exhibits. For the airport construction fund, we're requesting a $12 million increase in capital outlay to adjust for the timing of capital project expenditures. I think we've heard from the TSCC, this has kind of been an issue with kind of timing of cash flows in the last couple of years. So we're trying to, dot our I's and cross our T's with this adjustment here. And then finally, this agenda item also requests appropriations adjustments for the following interfund transfer and service reimbursements. So it's a $2.5 million increase from the airport construction fund to the general fund to provide for revised engineering support to PDX capital projects. With all of these adjustments, the total budget for fiscal year 21-22 is approximately $2.8 billion. At this time, staff requests approval of the executive director's recommendation.
Thank you. Any questions from the commission? Okay.
I'd move to approve.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All right, Pam will lead us through the vote.
Commissioners Alexander,
Aye.
Cooper Comas,
Aye.
Lamb,
Aye.
Luther,
Aye.
O'Halloran,
Aye.
Semput,
Aye.
and Strader.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Fran, I believe you're presenting the next agenda item.
So the second agenda item requests that the commission adopt the fiscal 22-23 budget and ordinance number 476-T levying property taxes in the Tri-County Port District. We reviewed the budget with commission in both April and May, and again with the Tax Supervising and Conservation Commission on June 8th. The TSCC certified our budget with no objections. So the budget submitted for adoption today does contain some changes from the amounts we reviewed with Commission in May as well as the TSCC in June. These changes are in the General Fund, the Airport Revenue Fund, Airport Construction Fund, CFC Fund, and the PFC Fund. And they are within the limits of the Oregon Revised Statutes, specifically ORS 294.456. And all of the changes are detailed in Exhibits C, D, and E and are attached to this agenda item. These changes represent a net increase of approximately $3 million from the budget approved by the Commission in May. And this increase is really driven by refinements in our operating projections, as well as refinements to our CFC and PFC revenue forecasts. I just realized I don't think I've spelled that out. So just for the record, CFC with the new commissioners of customer facility charges and passenger facility charges. The operating revenue budget has increased about $2.4 million, primarily due to refined airport parking revenue adjustments, as well as reimbursement revenues from the airlines and U.S. Army Corps of Engineers to reflect the operating expense adjustments. The operating expense budget has a net increase of about $1.3 million as a result of refinements in navigation fuel costs for the Dredge Oregon, anticipated minimum wage increases for airport service providers, as well as minor adjustments to the Terminal 6 container yard, and finally revised internal transfer labor rates across all divisions. The grants, interest income, and other budget decreased about $2 million, and that was to reflect lower customer facility charge and passenger facility charge revenues associated with a reduction in our employment forecast from a little over $8 million to $7.8 million, and that change really reflects airline schedule changes through the fall of 22. Finally, there's a net increase of $2.6 million in transfers between funds and a $928,000 reduction in contingencies as a result of all of the other changes. With that, the total budget for fiscal year 22-23 is approximately $2.9 billion. And again, at this time, staff requests approval of the executive director's recommendation to adopt the fiscal 2022-23 budget and enact ordinance 476-T.
Thank you. Do we have any questions? Okay, hearing none, I'll call for a motion and second for approval of the.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Right, Pam, would you lead us through the vote, please?
Commissioners Alexander,
Aye.
Kukrow, Comas,
Aye.
Lamb,
Aye.
Luther,
Aye.
O'Halloran,
Aye.
Sampat,
Aye.
and Strader.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. For our last agenda item, I'd ask Fran to read ordinance number 476T by title only.
An ordinance levying taxes to be collected in the fiscal year July 1, 2022 to June 30, 2023 upon the taxable property within the boundaries of the Port of Portland.
Thank you, Fran. Do we have a motion and second for enactment?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All right, Pam, we're ready.
Commissioners Alexander,
Aye.
Kukrow, Comas,
Aye.
Lamb,
Aye.
Luther,
Aye.
O'Halloran,
Aye.
Sampat,
Aye.
and Strader.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. The meeting's adjourned. Thanks for all the
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Stay safe.
Take care, everyone. Have a good 4th of July.